Alright, Trial Mob, welcome back to another Trial by Gaming feature, and today we're going to go over the question, was I wrong about Joytoy? Was I wrong about the Space Marines altogether? As of now, we are well over a year into their production cycle, and they have dropped many figures. And now, be that as it may, the Space Marines, the Primaries Space Marines, are really the bread and butter of Warhammer 40k. So has Joytoy done a good job? Well, we are revisiting an older release, and this one right here is just at the cusp of their 2.0 release. So let's go ahead and break it down. So when it comes to this figure, there are a lot of things that I really like. So this was an update from the original Space Marines that we saw. And as you guys can see from these photos, from these videos, there's a lot going on here. Joytoy did not skimp on detail, from the red ropes around the chest to the iconography over the body, the double-headed golden eagle looking absolutely incredible. I mean, there is a lot to enjoy about this figure. The cape itself is nice and regal looking. The weaponry is absolutely massive. Sometimes I even ask myself, is it too massive? But for the most part, as you can tell, they did a wonderful job of capturing all kinds of iconography and overall details. We know that Joytoy is not one to skimp, and so when it comes to that, at least, I tip my hat off to Joytoy for what they were able to experience with this figure. Now, the box that it comes in looks incredible. It's what we've grown to see so far, basically an all black covered box, and on the interior, or I should say the anterior, we get a lot of different shots on it of what it comes with, including the figure all broken down. It's a very nice display case and overall has a lot of good artwork on it. If you are an in-box collector and you're never going to open this is not a bad looking piece to have on your shelf. And overall, because of Joytoy's 1/18 scale size, this doesn't really take up a lot of space. If you decide to go with, multiple of these guys and build up an army, you'll always be able to have a very good look, as Joytoy does a nice job of showing you what the entire figure looks like on the box itself without needing to take it out, which is something that I really wish a lot of other manufacturers would follow suit. I like getting, obviously, artwork like Acid Rain does, but even Acid Rain on the back of their figures gives us a nice look at the figure itself inside the box. So no need to pull it out, and that is something that I wish that, again, more makers would do. But again, I think this is going to be a nice looking piece overall. It gives you enough reason to want to keep it around even after you've opened it. Now let's go ahead and pull him out. Now, when it comes to the figure itself, this is quite the upgrade from the 1.0 body. The 2.0 body looks incredible. It's massive. It has a small waist and larger proportions around that, which kind of emphasize the giganticism about these characters. Remember that these figures are supposed to have modeled after characters that have multiple organs and all kinds of genetic enhancements that are supposed to make them bulkier and bigger than they are naturally. So their frame looks, huge. And again, I really like this kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger look where, small waist and then everything else is just built up around it. It looks great. It looks proportionate. There's a lot going on here. If you guys remember, Awesome Action Toys did mention that this figure was a bit of, or should I say the 1.0 body, seemed to kind of come off as being a figure that was very toy-like, very, I should say, kind of animated looking. These don't seem to suffer from that as much. This looks more realistic. This looks more like what the actual figures would look like in real life, minus obviously the articulation and things like that. But as you guys can tell, as we're taking a close look, there's a lot of detail going on here. Joytoy made sure to cover a lot of different, not just paint applications, but some shading. There are all kinds of iconography on this figure. It really makes this one specifically stand out a lot, as this is something that we want. I know that the plain regular Space Marine doesn't have a lot of this, but it's what makes this figure just pop out so much at you. Now, when it comes to the accessories, again, they didn't really skimp out on here too. We get 2 different guns. We get 1 sword, which is massive. The backpack itself comes off, 4 separate hands, and then of course the cape. I didn't show the cape on here, but later on we will see the cape back onto the figure. But again, we get a lot of options here. The only thing that we didn't get is that the sidearm is not something that comes off of the figure, so keep that in mind. Okay, but here we have the backpack. The backpack looks great. The Ultramarines iconography on it looks awesome. The white tethers at the bottom are really nice. Here's the piece that I told you does not come off. So if he's holding his pistol, he's kind of holding both on the body at the same time. But of course he holds it with no problem, and it looks great in hand. This guy always looks really badass with what you can do, and the sword itself, as you can tell, is absolutely massive. I think this is one of my only gripes though. The hand looks the slightest bit small holding it. It can't seem to grip it all the way around. Same thing goes with this bolter. As you can tell, it kind of doesn't 100% hold it, but it has absolutely no problem holding it in hand. As you can tell, it doesn't grip all the way around. Apparently that is something that in newer releases we have seen a change in. Okay, and then here is the pointed hand in hand. It looks good, man. So when it comes to this figure overall, there are a bunch of upgrades that we have seen in terms of the body itself, but looking at the articulation, it has a bicep swivel at the top, and then right there we have a 2-part elbow piece, so double jointed. And what's nice about that 2-part is that you can get it nice and 90 degrees like that, or if you decide to drop the bottom one and then bring up the bottom elbow piece, it bends at a slightly different 90-degree angle. Okay, you can get a full 360 at the bottom of the waist and also at the top of the torso. At the bottom of the legs, we do get that swivel at the thigh, but it goes further than that. Double jointed knees in the back, and then you'll see right here that it goes really far. I don't think in lore they ever really go that deep. I don't even know if they ever get into kneeling positions to fire, but he can do it. Just as you saw at the very beginning, not a problem. And then the bottom of the foot is actually a little different, I want to say. It's a ball peg, so it kind of allows you to move the leg, the foot into different positions. You can move it forward, you can move it backwards. It could give him a little bit more height, or if you want to make it like he's running down a hill and trying to support himself up, you can. So there's a lot that's going on there. And then of course the tilt is not bad, I want to say, for what it is overall. And then the toe pivot goes up fairly far, though I really don't think I'm going to use that all that much. Now, of course, this wouldn't be much of a figure review without a few size comparisons, so let's go ahead and show you guys a few that we have here on the table. So to start things off, here we have Gauntlet from Acid Rain, and as you can tell from Acid Rain tends to be just the slightest bit taller than, let's say, your average 6-foot Joytoy figure. Not by much, but it is noticeable in terms of the overall body, and as you can tell, the Space Marine has no problem being larger than him. So at this point here, at this degree, he's definitely overall larger. Though proportionately this is a little odd looking, just because again Acid Rain has an overall different, not a different scale, but just a different way that they do their bodies. As you can tell right here, this is one of the Black Sand Troopers that are part of Gauntlet's team. So this is basically another figure around the same size, and again, as you can tell, not a problem. The Space Marine, our Primaries Captain Sidonicus, is definitely taller, definitely overall a bigger build, and it's larger. But I have a few gripes about the overall scale, and we'll get into that in a second. But let me just show you guys a few more figures that we have today. Now switching over back into Joytoy, here we actually have a Tau Fire Warrior, and as you can tell, again, not a problem in terms of if you want a larger figure. Here we have Sidonicus being definitely larger than the Tau figure overall, but not by much, and I feel like this is where scale becomes very, very important. You are 100% right to say that the Space Marines are definitely larger than everything else, but I can't help but to look at these two next to each other and feel like Sidonicus is really more of a 1/20th scale figure that would be big next to other 1/20th scale figures, but here he is standing next to a 1/18th scale figure, and while he is bigger because he's a bigger figure overall, he's not scaled properly to this Tau figure. This Tau figure should be, maybe in terms of height, I would say closer to the tassel, but as you can tell, it's just not as big as it should be. I mean, here's an even better example. So here we have the fire team warrior, or this isn't a fire team warrior. This right here is one of the captains, or should I say one of the commanders from the Tau army. And one of the things that I don't like is that if you look at the head of this commander, it should be the same size as the head of, let's say, any other Tau figure, but it almost looks larger than what is a super soldier helmeted head that's supposed to be suffering from a little bit of giganticism for how big they are. So this just goes to show you that I don't have any problem saying that Sidonicus is definitely big in comparison to any other figure, but especially when you're looking at these size comparisons right here, that general size difference starts to become a lot more noticeable in the fact that the Space Marines are at least all of them about an inch too short to be accurate to lore. Now I'll touch base on that a little bit more later. I wanted to at least show you guys some of this right here. So here he is next to the new Joytoy's Ryu, which I will be doing a full review on this guy. He is an incredible figure, but I will show you guys why in a full review. Obviously 1/12 scale, so way larger, but I almost feel like, you know, the disparity between their sizes and height shouldn't actually be all that much. Now, going along in our fighters motif, here I have Mike Tyson, Iron Mike Tyson from Storm Collectibles. This is an awesome figure. I'm a huge fan of Mike Tyson, and to finally have a figure of him, especially in Storm Collectibles, is just incredible. As you can tell, Storm Collectibles tends to be fairly larger than your normal 1/12 scale stuff. So even though he's probably about Ryu's height in real life, in this form, figure form, he's obviously even larger. So I zoomed out a little bit just so you guys can see the full height difference, but yeah, not even close. Now here we have the SH Figure Arts Chainsaw Man, which by the way is a crazy action figure. I'm definitely not sure if I like him or hate him, but I will say he's polarizing and pretty damn interesting. SH Figure Arts tends to make their stuff a little bit on the smaller scale of 1/12 scale stuff, so as you can tell, he's not too much larger. That big old chainsaw demon head makes him look a bit more taller than he really is, but it's an awesome figure, and I'll have to do a review on that in the future. Now, this right here is a premium Bandai release. This is the Goof Flight Type, and it's probably my favorite Goof figure that I have currently. I'll have to do a full review on this guy for all my premium Bandai guys, and just in general my Gundam stuff. But basically, what I wanted to point out about this guy is when I put these two together, I think that this highlighted what I wanted out of a Space Marine. If you look at the overall height of the Goof to the right, I think that more or less is the height that I wanted. It's not a huge difference. It's not like he's like 3-4 inches taller. It doesn't look like it's completely out of scale. It's just about literally a whole head taller, roughly almost an inch. I think that would have been perfect. Okay, and then to top it all off, just for fun, I have the second form Frieza, which is absolutely and crazily massive, but I did that more for the fun of it. Now, to finish up with final thoughts, let's go ahead and talk about playability of the figure. Listen, when it comes to this figure overall, it's a big, bulky character by any standard. He has absolutely massive weapons. You know, the bolter is big, the sword is big, the pistol's still fairly large, but most of that doesn't seem to get in the way of the figure at all. It poses really nicely. The shoulder joints are ratcheted, so I don't know if you can see that as I'm playing with it and I'm moving it around. It basically ratchets into place, which allows it to hold up its guns, to hold up its massive sword, and to just kind of keep it in place the way it should. It's not falling apart. Joints feel fairly tight. the softer plastics, are, soft and malleable, like the cape. Nothing necessarily gets in the way. The waist piece itself can move up and down a little bit, so you can get this guy into different poses, be it, a kneeling position, and you get just enough articulation out of this guy so that he can basically aim down sight. So there's not a lot of things going wrong with this figure overall. I'd be lying if I told you, don't buy this character. If you have no problem with the scale, everything else about this figure is bar none probably the best stuff we're ever going to get from Warhammer 40k from any manufacturer. Luckily Joytoy just does it really, really good. So if this is the last frontier, the last kind of brand that's going to pick up the Warhammer 40k franchise, I'm glad that it is Joytoy, because they really have done a really good job with this figure. Is it perfect? Could it be a little bit different? Are there certain things that could have been upgraded to give it a little bit more, let's say, articulation, right? Yes, the pauldrons are a little too tight to push out of the way, so you can't really get them up into a T-pose. The hands are a little bit on the small side, so they don't necessarily grip everything. It's not even that they don't grip it perfectly. They grip it well, as you can tell. I've been moving the stuff around, swinging it around, making this guy aim upwards and do all this crazy stuff. Nothing's fallen off, not one time. So obviously that's not really an issue there, but from a visual standpoint, I do wish his hands were bigger. And from what I've seen from some of Scallywag's reviews, they've given some of these guys like 3.0 hands to basically have bigger hands to hold the weapons more fully. There, I wouldn't even say that was a fault of the figure. The sword just kind of knocked it out of hand there. So that's my point, though, that ultimately this is a great figure. It poses well, it holds all its weapons well, it's bulky, it looks massive in hand, but ultimately the scale is too small, and I don't think anybody in the community really disputes that. Everybody that I speak to that talks about the general size of this figure basically says that either the figure is small but they don't care and to them it's perfectly fine, or the figure is just small and they wish that it was in fact larger. And that is something that is very important to note. The entire community agrees that it is too small. Whether or not it's too small for you to say that you'll buy it anyway and enjoy it, of course not. I'm not saying that that's a problem, but I am saying that ultimately everybody agrees that this figure should be larger, and I do believe we are going to get a 3.0 body here soon enough. However, if Joytoy decides not to do that, I am working on a little remedy in the background. I am hoping that in the next few weeks I will have something more tangible to show you guys to try to remedy some of these height issues. Something that anyone can get into and that anyone can make the change to their figure. So we'll see if that comes to full fruition, but I wanted to at least announce it a little bit. If you're looking at this figure and you love the way it looks and you just wish it had a little bit more height, hopefully we can do something about that, because as you can tell, especially from this double wielded sword pose, these guys are awesome to play with and awesome to have in hand. Alright, Trial Mob, so let me know what you guys think about this video in the review format. Let me know what you guys think about this figure. Do you still plan on buying it? Have you not bought in just yet? Obviously, Joytoy is now moving into doing Infinity stuff as well. Are you more into buying that now? Or is Warhammer still something you're prioritizing to try to buy? I know that for a lot of us, this is something that is a dream come true to see, and I highly recommend giving these guys a look. Buy one of the Primaries. If the size is too small, it is what it is. Find a way to sell it. If the size isn't a big problem to you and you decide to keep it, I really do think ultimately it's an awesome figure, and buying multiple of them might not be a bad thing. They're at least as big as they should be in terms of being bigger than everybody else, but ultimately too small to scale properly. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what was your best part. Let me know what you guys are going to be buying soon. And it's very, very nice to jump back onto a few reviews and try to engage the community. Big shout out to everybody who's been hitting me up since I put up my lap post. I'm hoping to bring you guys much more content, not just Warhammer based, but everything else based soon enough. Deuces.